Welcome to The Connector, where we connect North Carolina to ideas and North Carolinians to each other. This podcast series is from the Institute for Emerging Issues at North Carolina State University. And now to the conversation.
Welcome to The Connector. I'm your host, Sarah Hall, Director of the Institute for Emerging Issues at NC State University. Our 2023 Emerging Issues Forum on Talent First Economics examined labor force participation and the barriers that 5 underrepresented groups face when securing and maintaining employment. One of those groups was parents and caregivers of young children, with a key barrier being access to childcare. Later that year, the NC Department of Commerce created a Child Care Business Liaison group under the state's Economic Development Plan as a means of addressing the insufficient supply of high quality and affordable child care across the state. Today, our guests will talk about how this state level role is addressing the child care gap and introduce the NC TriShare, a pilot public-private partnership designed to make childcare more accessible for workers who face this as a barrier. I'm excited to welcome our podcast guests, Samantha Cole with the NC Department of Commerce, Mary Scott with NC Smart Start, and Shannon White with the Cleveland County Partnership for Children. Thank you all for joining us today. Samantha, let's start with you. I first became a fan of yours when you presented at the NC Economic Development Developers Association meeting on the work you were doing with the Asheville Chamber and workforce development around inclusive hiring practices. You later participated in our Talent First Economics community cohort and became one of the first in the nation to receive a designation of Certified Workforce Leader. We're getting ready to host our next course, April 29th through May 2nd. And so before we dive into today's discussion, I'm really curious how your experience with that program helped you prepare for your new role at Commerce.
Sarah, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here and to talk with you all about this. I had a wonderful experience in the Certified Workforce Leader cohort, not only bonding more closely with my colleagues from across the state in workforce and economic development and learning more about their experiences and best practices and innovations that they've implemented in their organizations, but really living and breathing this notion that workforce development and economic development are parts of a whole. Like, these are 2 disciplines that really depend on one another for success. And thinking critically about barriers to labor force participation, which I realize we're here to talk about today a little bit, and ways we can reduce or eliminate those barriers is really essential to making sure that economic opportunity reaches every corner of our state, yes, but also make sure that our economy grows and strengthens the way that we want to and need it to.
Be a part of that program, and y'all put on a terrific event out in the western part of the state as well, focused on early childhood as well. So can you give us, so let's dive into NC TriShare. Can you give us a high-level overview of NC TriShare and your role with that pilot program?
Certainly. Yeah, I'll start with the why. So I know I mentioned this a minute ago, but we realize that there are many barriers to labor force participation that all too frequently adversely impact the ability of a working age person to participate in North Carolina's labor force. Those include things like housing availability, transportation, and yes, they include, very stubbornly, unfortunately, childcare access. Whenever we don't have adequate access to childcare, especially as a working age parent of a young child, that causes us to have really challenging conversations and make very tough decisions inside our own households. That quick back of envelope math where we're looking at the cost of childcare to pay for it out of pocket, if we can even find it to begin with, because it is such a scarce resource. A lot of people look at that and they very quickly say, I can't afford to work because I can't afford this care, or even if I can afford it, I can't find it, and I can't find it consistently enough. And we know that that is not only holding individual households back from experiencing the economic opportunity we want people to be able to enjoy, but it's also really harming our state's economy. It is keeping us from being able to grow and strengthen the way that we would really want to and need to. Back in October, of this past year, NC Child and the North Carolina Department of Commerce, specifically my colleagues at the Labor and Economic Analysis Division, published a report called Empowering Work, where they looked at 2023 and took a look to try to identify roughly how many working age parents of young children in our state were sidelined from the workforce. And they developed a range there. The high end of that range looked at roughly about 31,000 working age parents of young children who were sidelined from the workforce at that time. And then from there, they looked at what the possible benefits to our economy would be had we been able to welcome those folks back into the workforce that year. And the findings were really staggering. It looked like we were leaving on the table billions of dollars in economic output, billions of dollars in increased gross domestic product for our state, tens of thousands of jobs that would have been directly and indirectly created just by these folks participating in our labor force. So we know that there is untapped potential, untapped opportunity in our economy that's there. And we also know that enabling better access to childcare isn't just a benefit for people who happen to have young kids. It's also a lever that we can pull. It is an opportunity that we can take to grow and strengthen our workforce and our economy. So how NC TriShare comes into play with that is that it very well addresses one of the three core components to childcare access challenges that we experience here in North Carolina, as do states across the country, which is challenges affording high quality childcare. Unfortunately, childcare access is very expensive here and of course in other states. That is not a new or uncommon problem in North Carolina compared to other states in the country. Unfortunately, it's kind of like everywhere else in the sense that it's very expensive. In many cases here, the average cost of full-time childcare tuition for an infant is actually more expensive than public tuition at one of North Carolina's public universities like UNC Chapel Hill. So parents are parting with a lot of money to try to be able to afford the ability just to go to work, just to make sure that their children are safe and cared for, and are getting a quality education too, at the same time that they're being able to participate in the workforce. NC TriShare is an exciting innovation that was gleaned from the state of Michigan that piloted it a few years before we began piloting it here in North Carolina. That really helps us make sure that that chunk of money that parents are parting with in that childcare tuition is not so outsized that it interferes with savings. It becomes more affordable. It's something that's more sustainable for those parents to be able to afford. And so they can stay in the workforce. They can feel more confident about accepting that promotion, accruing new skills, continuing into their careers at the same time that they're raising children. And it does that by splitting the cost of tuition in three ways. So first, if you are financially eligible to participate in NC TriShare, you will cover 33% of the cost of your existing childcare tuition. Your employer, if they enroll in the program, will cover an additional 33%, and then state dollars come in and cover the final 33%. So ultimately, it is a reduction of 66% of your overall childcare tuition fees if you qualify to participate in the program, which is really something that can open enormous doors, not only for those workers and their families, but also for employers who participate in terms of talent recruitment and retention.
That's very interesting. So I do have a question that I'm sure is on everyone's mind, and that is, what has been the response from participating employers?
Sure. I think that there is a tremendous amount of interest, and something that I'm really excited about in this role, especially now that I'm rounding out my first year in it, is seeing exactly how invested people in the private sector, people in the public sector, folks in nonprofit organizations and organizations focused on early childhood and also economic and workforce development are in finding solutions to these problems and considering different innovations that they can use. I think that employer organizations are really interested in trying to find opportunities and entry points into meaningful interventions that can help increase access to childcare for their workers that stop short of them having to figure out how to finance and also operationalize offering full-time on-site childcare on their campuses. And I certainly encourage that whenever it's something employers are ready, willing, and able to do, but also knowing that not everyone is. NC TriShare is a really exciting alternative because it's a very important recognition of workers' childcare tuition needs And it's also a really innovative step forward that can help employer organizations stand apart. I think that one thing that we're still working hard on doing in support of the project is making sure that there's awareness among employers across the state that this is an opportunity available to them to participate in this and to do it at a much more, I would say, competitive set of costs than there would be if they were to consider something like a more expensive intervention, like building near-site or on-site childcare, and making sure that that information is in their hands so that they can determine whether or not this is the right step for them.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Samantha. And, I think back, my children, you can see their photo in the background, they're 21 months apart. And so for all those parents out there that have, 2 kids, 2 or more children in childcare at the same time, that upfront cost is well over a mortgage payment. And
very significant.
And so the pain is real. And I do think back to, I was listening to a story, I was presenting at the NC Works Partnership conference a couple of years ago, and I had someone come up, a business owner from Eastern North Carolina, came up and said, decades ago, we heard about this issue. We wanted to do something. We built an on-site childcare. And he said, mixed reviews, but we found that some parents didn't want to send their kids there because they didn't want their employer to know about how their kids behaved. And so when you were mentioning that, and there's probably really good examples of where that works really, really well. But in this instance, it was really small, and they said it didn't get used. So having an example like this, where there's more anonymity would be good. So, Mary, I'm going to turn it over to you now. So you lead NC TriShare through your role with Smart Start. Tell us about your position and why this program is essential for your organization's mission.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you so much for having us on to talk about this topic. I think that's a great success for all of us, is to hear so many people talking about childcare and how it doesn't just affect families or parents of young children, but really all of society in some way, as Samantha covered. So I work with the North Carolina Partnership for Children, which is a state level organization that serves as the hub or backbone support for the Smart Start Network, which consists of 75 local partnerships covering all 100 counties. And we're mainly funded by the General Assembly and are set up as a public-private partnership, been around for over 30 years. And those Smart Start partnerships are really the boots on the ground in every community, connecting cross-sector partners around early childhood issues, and also offering resources and support and programs for families or caregivers to really work to increase the quality of early childhood education and offer family support. Specifically in the early childhood education realm, we focus on 3 primary pieces, and that's what we call the trilemma. So it's access, availability, and quality. And so the Smart Start partnerships do this in their communities through lots of different programs, such as helping parents afford care, which is where TriShare fits in, as well as NC Pre-K and subsidy programs. We also work to increase options for families, such as family childcare homes, new models for small businesses. And then regarding quality, we work to increase teacher compensation and support training and technical assistance to providers and provide scholarships to teachers. So that's just a few of the many ways that we lean into access, availability, and quality. And the specific work I do with the North Carolina Partnership for Children is to lead the Strategic Initiatives Department. And that team is really focused on Smart Start's priority areas, which are family support, early care and education, literacy, and child, family, and community health. And we do this by working with our learning and evaluation team to identify evidence-based, evidence-informed programs that the Smart Start partnerships can choose to fund with their Smart Start allocation dollars. In addition to that, we seek innovative solutions and pilot opportunities to really bring additional options to communities to try out and see how they work. And that's really where TriShare fits in. So that's one of our current pilots that we are hosting, is the TriShare program. And it really fits squarely with our mission, which is to advance a high quality, comprehensive, accountable early childhood system that benefits each child in North Carolina, beginning with a healthy birth. And so we were tasked by the General Assembly with designing, planning, and launching this program with 3 regional hubs. And that's where we're also learning from Michigan, as Samantha mentioned, who really initiated this pilot in their state. And Samantha may have mentioned this, but part of the goals of the program that are in legislation are to make high quality childcare affordable and accessible for working families, to help employers retain and attract employees, and to help stabilize the childcare businesses across the state.
Great. And so, Mary, from a statewide perspective, what has been the impact of NC TriShare so far?
Well, first and foremost, I think awareness of this issue, having so many people talking about it, as I mentioned before, having the General Assembly choosing to fund it and put additional money into this new kind of subsidy type program is tremendous. I think that's a huge success, first of all, that it was funded and that we're able to try it out. We worked really hard with the 3 regional hubs and with Catapult Employers Association. They are serving as our third-party benefit administrator. So they're managing the funding and the payment and kind of the initial eligibility platform. And so we really worked intentionally to build this streamlined system across the state so that it would not only work as a pilot, but we would be ready to expand or to make it a permanent program if that was warranted. So we've just been really intentional with the whole process along the way. It was quite a heavy lift to design it and plan it for the first part of last year. We started beta testing in July and August, and really fully launched to the public to sign on to the program in September. So it's only been about 7 months so far. It's still relatively new. And for anybody who's run a pilot, you know, pilots take time. You have to take time getting the word out about what the program is. There have been lots of presentations, I think over 100 different presentations across the state to employers, chambers of commerce, economic development offices. So we're really in that stage of getting the word out. We hosted a TriShare week a couple of weeks ago where we had 4 virtual sessions and 2 in-person sessions to let folks know about the program, and just really helping an employer move from interest, because there is tremendous interest, no doubt, but moving from that interest to actually taking the steps to signing on. And there's just a few steps that are involved in that process that we're working through right now. And then, yes, we're just seeing lots of interest. I think sometimes what it boils down to is if the employer is interested, it's then determining if their staff are eligible for the program, because in legislation it states that eligibility includes families with a household income between 185 and 300% of the federal poverty level and not otherwise eligible for subsidy. So there is a window of who is eligible. So those are pieces that we're working through, and really hope to see our numbers just start to go up as more people know about it. But as Samantha mentioned, I think just a big success is talking about it, sharing the information, and letting folks know about the program.
Mm-hmm. And Mary, I would say that's been very successful. That's how we've found out about the program as well from your NC TriShare week. It made us want to have you on the podcast.
Good.
So you hold tight. I actually want to have a question for Shannon. So Shannon, I want to turn it over to you. Your organization, the Cleveland County Partnership for Children, was selected as a regional hub, as one of the regional hubs. Why did you want to participate in the pilot program? Oh, and you're on mute, so.
Sorry about that. That's a really good question. I think that we saw NC TriShare as a strategic opportunity to address one of the biggest barriers facing working families in our community, and that is access to affordable quality childcare. You know, as an organization, we're deeply rooted in early childhood systems, so we really believe that this model could bridge the gap between families, employers, and providers in a way that promotes economic mobility and stability. I think by taking on the role of a hub or a regional hub, we could bring innovative solutions to our region, support our workforce, and strengthen our childcare infrastructure, all while ensuring that children have the opportunity to thrive in high-quality learning environments.
That's great. So again, we know just 7 months the pilot has been going, but I'm going to ask you the same question. Have you seen any impact so far, early wins, anything you want to share so far about what's happening at the local level?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's been extremely immediate and meaningful. I believe it's creating a win-win-win situation for families, businesses in the childcare sector. I do believe that it's additionally opened doors for more intentional conversations with employers about the importance of supporting the caregiving workforce, and really bringing light to the fact that we have some pretty hardworking early childcare teachers out there, and there's a lot of success to be had in that realm if it's adequately supported.
Yeah. Well, so I do have one follow-up question for all of you, but Shannon, I'm going to start with you, and we'll do this as more of a lightning round. But what do you think is the next big issue related to the caregiving workforce that you think leaders are going to want to explore together?
Oh, I really believe the next big issue is addressing compensation, equity, and career advancement for our early childhood workforce. These professionals performing essential high-impact work, yet unfortunately, they remain among some of the lowest paid in our economy. And if we're serious about stabilizing and expanding those childcare options, I really believe we need to look at exploring sustainable strategies, wage supplements, long-term funding models that honor and retain this workforce. I think the well-being of families and the economic health for our communities really depend on it.
Yeah. Well, Shannon, we're so lucky to have you in Cleveland County doing this work on the ground. So thank you so much for being with us today. Mary, I want to ask you the same question. What do you think is the next big issue related to the caregiving workforce that you think people are going to rally behind?
There are so many issues. As I mentioned before, just the trilemma is affordability, accessibility, and quality. And I really think that those are equally important. You just can't, they get out of balance if you just fund one or just focus on one. So it's all important, but in that quality piece really is, I've got to go with my colleague Shannon on this one. It really is caregiver workforce compensation. And really shifting how our society views this work and attributes the role of this work. I think for too long it's been seen, it's been undervalued and seen maybe as babysitting, and the skills and competencies have been undervalued. And so teachers deserve fair wages for the work that they do. They deserve access to technical assistance and educational opportunities, professional development. And before the pandemic, teachers were making an average of $12 an hour in North Carolina, and just about any other job out there will pay more than that. And it's such a crucial bit of work that they do. It's so much more than babysitting. And with 90% of a child's brain development happening in the first 5 years of life, it's just critically important, not only for teachers to be paid well, but for those children to be able to benefit from a high quality, nurturing environment during those really vulnerable years. So we have to make sure that we are leaning into that compensation piece first and foremost. That's not new. That's been existing for a long time, but I do think we need to focus on that going forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mary. Appreciate you being on here today. And I'm going to turn it over to Samantha for the last word. Same question for you. What is the next big issue related to the caregiving workforce that you think folks are going to rally behind?
That something we have to kind of keep in mind is that the folks who do this work every day, the folks who are developing neurons in children's brains and preparing them to succeed at school and in life, they are doing something that is their heart's work, knowing that they could make more doing anything else, probably for less stress, less strain, less heartache, less personal expense, less difficulty. And it's time for us not only to acknowledge that with respect that is so richly deserved by these folks who are doing this incredible work, but also with compensation and benefits, like my colleagues have just mentioned. And I would also add that an important language shift around that is probably acknowledging that childcare access is not just a social issue that impacts moms, parents, and children who are young. It is an economic development and a workforce development issue. Childcare access is imperative to the strength and health of our economy. And I think making sure that we are recognizing the incredibly significant role that early childhood educators play in that, and in our ability to make sure that organizations across our state and every industry have the workforces that they need to succeed, to ensure that critical services are available and provided to people who choose this state as the place that they want to live, work, and raise families. That's essential as the next step. And I think making sure that those recognitions of workforce are there is just the right thing to do. It is smart business sense. It's the right thing to do for our economy. And I think making sure that we have plenty of public investment in that acknowledgement of the essential nature of early childhood educators, and also private avenues for employer organizations to get meaningfully involved in this work, are both very important.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Samantha, for your leadership, and congratulations on a year in this role, over a year in this role. You're doing great work.
Thank you.
So thank you all for being with us today. Again, the child care crisis in North Carolina and across the nation is impacting our workforce and economic growth, as Samantha has shared. And I've enjoyed learning more about the NC Tri Share as a strategy to help increase access to childcare across North Carolina. So to learn more, visit smartstart.org. Thanks again. Until next time, stay connected.
This has been a presentation from the Institute for Emerging Issues at North Carolina State University. To learn more, please visit us at emergingissues.org.